Greetings. Uhuru, peace, black power, African power to all my people out there. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism, Pan-Afrikan Book Club. I am Kimba Ojore, co-host, writer at We Charge Colonialism Media and Think Tank. I'm here with my brother, my comrade. Introduce yourself, brother.
Peace, everyone. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series every Sunday, 1 p.m.
Right on. And the third member of our team is not with us this morning, but I want to give a shout out to Natasha for successfully defending her dissertation proposal. So she's on her way. Big up to Natasha X, Uhuru to you, and all that you do. But we're going to hold it down this morning, man. Appreciate everybody that's tapping in with us live and who will be tapping in with us later on. To make sure that you like and share, make sure that you subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here. And y'all know how we do here, particularly at the book club, we go into some very serious analysis of some of our great thinkers, great books, looking at biographies, looking at just a bunch of theoretical work by scholars such as Frantz Fanon, who we're looking at today. But we've looked at Patrice Lumumba and Nkrumah, works by Malcolm X in the past, Dr. Emerson Wilson, Bobby E. Wright. So we're going to keep on building, bringing this information to our people. But before we get into the book reading, we do like to do a weekly roundup as we look at different stories around the world as it pertains to the African experience. And so that's how we're going to start it off today. So I have a story on Sudan, and I'm going to go right into that because we got an hour to get into all of this. So I'm going to share my screen. Sudan has been in a civil war for over 2 years now. It's been 2 years, comrade. And they're still fighting over there. People are still losing their lives. And when we talk about genocide, because there is a genocide taking place in Palestine, right? The Zionist regime over there is committing atrocities in what is considered the Middle East, in Asia, and there are tens of thousands of Palestinians losing their lives. But I think what gets lost in this focus on Palestine is the genocide that's taking place right on the African continent in Sudan. And so, I just wanted to make sure that we refocus, because what the colonizer does a great job at is distracting us from internal issues, things that are really affecting African people. And so, though all of it is connected and we're dealing with the same colonizer, because the Zionist is something that African people have to deal with as well. But we have to make sure that we are home first, and we're seeing that, what is taking place, what atrocities are taking place against our own brothers and sisters. So with that being said, I just want to go into this a little bit, and I want to point out a serious contradiction. It's a contradiction for us, but not necessarily the imperialists, because they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. But you can see right here, Sudan horror knows no bounds, says UN as deaths in Darfur rise. Now you notice that it's the United Nations who is putting out this report and saying that though Al Jazeera is reporting this, the UN is on the ground. They are observing what's taking place in Sudan, and they know that these atrocities are taking place, right? And I say that for a reason, because I'm going to bring the United Nations back up a little later. So UN rights chief says civilians trapped in dire conditions in and around El Fasher as RSF warns of further bloodshed. more than 540 people. This story is put out May 1st too, just so we can understand like how close we are to these atrocities in time. That is, more than 540 people have been killed in Sudan's North Darfur in just 3 weeks as paramilitaries intensified their attritional battle for the regional capital of El Fasher, according to the United Nations. The horror unfolding in Sudan knows no bounds, said Volker Turk, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, in a statement on the devastating impact of the 2-year civil war published on Thursday, signaling the death toll of 542 over the past 3 weeks was likely much higher. Now, mind you, during this conflict too, well, it says it right here. So I'm just going to keep reading. So Darfur in particular has been a key battleground in the brutal war that erupted in April 2023 between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces, which have left tens of thousands dead, uprooted more than 12 million people, and created what the UN describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. And just to put that in perspective, with all the focus on what's happening in Palestine and free Palestine, don't get me wrong, but you have a population in the Gaza, which was 2 million. Because of the genocide over there, those numbers have dropped drastically. But here you are with a population of 12 million people who have been displaced. The population is much larger, but 12 million of the population of the Republic of Sudan has been displaced as a result of this civil war. And to put that in perspective, right now I'm here in New York City with the 5 boroughs, which has a population of somewhere around 12 million. So that's like the whole New York City just being uprooted and having to go somewhere else because of a conflict. The RSF, which lost Khartoum last month, has in recent weeks mounted multiple attacks on El Fasher and the nearby refugee camps of Zamzam and Abu Shuk, triggering an exodus of hundreds of thousands of people across the desert to the town of Tawila. So I'm just going to go down here. I want to get to another point in this story. So Turk also highlighted reports of extrajudicial executions in Khartoum state, which he described as extremely disturbing. He described videos circulating on social media that showed at least 30 men in civilian clothing being rounded up and shot by armed men in RSF uniforms in the Al-Saha area in the country's second largest city, Durman. In a subsequent video, an RSF field commander acknowledged the killings. He said, the video followed shocking reports of the extrajudicial executions of dozens of people accused of collaborating with the RSF in southern Khartoum in recent weeks, which had allegedly been committed by the Al-Bara bin Malik Brigade, a pro-SAF armed rebel group, according to Turk. So we see these atrocities happen on both sides. So this story, I'm gonna stop this story right here, or at least this report right here, and I wanted to pull something else up really quick. Yeah, so you have this conflict that's taking place in there, and recently we had some attacks in Sudan, some drone attacks in Sudan. This was not too long ago. I'm just going to share this. So really, and I'm not going to go through all this story. I just kind of want to give us an idea of what's happening in real time over the last couple of weeks and in real time. So we have Port Sudan explosions. Lifeline for aid comes under attack for 4th day. Since Sunday, Port Sudan has been a target of drone attacks that the Army has blamed on rapid support forces. And these attacks is making it difficult. This is a place where many people who have been fleeing for safety have sought refuge. And now this place is under attack by the RSF. The water supply is being cut off in this area, and so many of the Sudanese people are having a difficult time accessing clean water, drinking water, water to bathe. Except as a result of this, the price of water has risen or increased 5 times the amount that it was about a month ago. So people in Sudan, in this area, are now having a difficult time of gaining access to water, which is just going to cause more of a humanitarian crisis for the people there. But I just want to quickly just bring to everyone's attention, and Frank, I'm gonna come to you in a second. I just want to connect some dots for people so that they can see like how hypocritical the UN as well as the United States is. And so the ICJ is going to dismiss the Sudanese government is going to bring a case to the ICJ charging the UAE of supporting genocide, supporting the RSF rebels in Sudan, ultimately supporting genocide. And so the ICJ dismisses this. And I'm not going to, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of this story. But the reason why they dismiss it is because they said they do not have jurisdiction over the UAE. The UN, who also at one time reported that the UAE, there's evidence that the UAE is backing the RSF. And there has been recent reports that the UAE is using Chinese weapons, providing weaponry purchased from the Chinese to arm the RSF. So you have the RSF who are committing genocide by way of the UAE with Chinese weapons, right? That's what's happening right now. The last thing I want to bring up is how the UAE and the United States are connected. And at one time, the United States also came out with a report and said that the UAE is supporting the RSF, and it even sanctions the Justice Department even put sanctions on two of the largest companies in the UAE that was connected with the genocide that's taking place there. So this story right here, which just recently came out, and I think this is something too, Frank, that we probably could talk about as well. Morocco, because Morocco has been in the news when with everything that's happening in Burkina Faso. But you can see the UAE to invest in Morocco, Nigeria gas pipeline project, and so you have this story right here. The UAE and the United States, it's not in the storyline in the heading, but the United States and the UAE have been discussing putting a $25 billion project to build this pipeline that's going to go through 13 African countries. And this is important, you know, Frank. Like this is very important because of what's happening with the Sahelian states. And it's like, okay, Morocco, Nigeria, you can't be on both sides. And we have to look at like who are these countries that's involved, because the US is now attempting to get over there, invest, right? Just had a new story that came out with the US in Congo, right? With a trade agreement over their minerals. So the United States and the UAE, and again, going back to the UAE, is a country who is backing a militia that's committing genocide in Sudan. And the United States, the last thing I'll say, the United States, who again claimed that they were doing this, right? The UAE, that is, when you go to the embassy, I'm just like right now, just want to point out these contradictions and the hypocrisy. When you go to the embassy, right, page now, what does it say? The Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Washington, D.C., UAE-U.S. cooperation. Do I got that on screen yet? This is like, bruh, this is hypocrisy 101. Security. The UAE and the U.S. are committed to preserving security and strengthening stability in the Middle East and the world. The UAE has become America's most capable and dependable military partner in the Arab world. I bet they are. The UAE has developed alongside the U.S. in coalition counterterrorism, the same country that is funding terrorism, stabilization and peacekeeping missions 6 times. In addition, the UAE provides essential support for U.S. troops, aircrafts, and Navy vessels in the Middle East region. Beyond the battlefield, the UAE and the U.S. are partnering to block the flow of funds and foreign fighters to terrorist groups and counter extremist ideologies. The United States is full of, and I'm going to curse right now, shit. Hey, Frank, just wanted to get all of that out. It's all yours, man.
Man, you did a very great job, putting these things together. You see, this is why, like, we really need to understand the system, and this is where sometimes I tell people who don't understand what is going on, and they like to say, hey, Trump. I keep telling them, it's not Trump. We are dealing with a system. We understand Trump have his own individual issues, whatsoever things we think about him, right? But it is not Trump. We are dealing with a system. Trump was not the one that killed Gaddafi. And sometimes we always say, oh, they use Obama. And Obama went and killed Gaddafi. Trump was not the one that killed Gaddafi. Trump was not the one that destroyed Libya. Trump was not the one that killed Patrick Lumumba. Trump was not the one that established the war in DRC Congo. Trump was not the one that killed Thomas Sankara. Trump was not the one that went to assassinate African leader. Trump was not the one that tried to remove Nkrumah. Trump was not the one that went to assassinate the first African leaders to be assassinated. Was in Liberia, E.J. Raw, in 1871, because of the same ideology that he wanted to bring to Liberia. He had the idea of Michael Garvey. In 1871, they killed him. Trump was not the one that went and killed Tobo of Liberia in the 80s, after Tobo decided that, America is not going to help her. We have to move to the USSR, like Russia. They want to kill him. I mean, these are all examples, right? So when we are looking at issues, we should look at it from a very broad perspective, not a narrow perspective to say, oh, Trump is the problem. Trump is just being, I think the ancestral, right, are using Trump, right, for us to see the reality, because Trump is not the kind of person that do secret rebuke. Trump is the one that do open rebuke. Trump come and tell you, look, this is how we feel about you. This is how it is. But on the other hand, the other people, they do secret rebuke and do their stuff behind the scene against us, and then come and add that they love us. So the other people, what they do like the slave mentality. They pet the slave back. They treat the slave nice. They drink tea. They break bread with the slave. But on the other hand, Trump is telling you, I am not going to break bread with the tea. I'm not going to break bread with the slave, right? I'm not going to drink tea with the slave. I'm going to tell you, you are a slave, right? That's a difference, but they are all the same. You see, even to have the United Nations in Sudan, right? Let us be frank here. We've been saying these things time with our numbers. Who control the United Nations? The United States. Holistically control the United Nations. And it is the same United States that is against peace and security on the African continent, so to speak. It is the same United States that is against African empowerment. It is the same United States that is against African liberation. It is the same United States that is against African taking control, right, of their thing. It is the same United States against it. It is the same United States against people's president, people's leader. but rather the United States support leaders that are not in the interest of the people. It is the same United States. So how can a nation have control holistically the United Nations, and then the United Nations is within that area, and then giving a news about what is going on? Again, we saw it in DRC Congo. It was the same United Nations that was there looting and exploiting the people resources. 2013, when the United Nations truck had an accident, just one truck, and it was estimated that that truck, the mineral that was in that truck, worth billions of dollars. Just one truck. A United Nations who is in an area for peace, but here it is. They are carrying mineral resources in a truck, in a United Nations truck that had an accident that worth billions of dollars. So that is to tell you, the United Nations is an organization, a terrorist organization in Africa, or in a nation that they call terror, that they have created this war and then send it for peace to extract or exploit the resources. The United Nations is no different from those terrorist organization that is being sponsored by OSA entity. The United Nations is not different. The United Nations is just the same as the AFRICOM that today on the African continent we are seeing as a armed terrorist group that is there to train and remove African leaders who will not be in support of Western foreign policy. So to speak, with the United Nations. The United Nations, okay, is just the same as the USAID that have been alleged that it is an entity that is sponsoring terrorist activities, Boko Haram, Al Qaeda, ISIS. So what is the difference between the United Nations and USAID when USAID is a branch of the United States government? Because the United States government, okay, in parliament every year, they cut a budget. They have a funds that they cut just for this entity specifically. So, and USAID have been alleged to be a sponsor of proxy war. What is the difference between the USAID and the United Nations, which is solely sponsored or controlled by the United States and backed by UK? I mean, we should be frank and real to each other here as Black people, as African people. At this time, I don't think we should have any Western entity or organization, right, or influence on the African continent to come and fight. Why you think Abraham Traore remove all foreign entity? That was how, in the first place, Libya developed. Because before Gaddafi came in, Libya was known as a terror country, as a nation of poverty. I mean, you name it, disease, war, crime. But when Libya came in, when Gaddafi came in, he drove all foreign media, all foreign entity, all foreign NGO, all foreign organization, even the United Nations, he drove them away. And then gradually, he began to nationalize the nation resources, the oil. And once he nationalized that, Libya, and then led from terror, became the most popular and powerful nation in Africa, where they did not depend on foreign aid. They did not take foreign aid. They used their resources to develop themselves, to enrich themselves. All right. So in this current time, Abraham Traore is doing the same thing. Who went against Abraham Traore? The same United States and UK. And currently, as we speak, right, we're going to speak about this tomorrow. The United States Congress has alleged that African people are terrorists. Don't believe me. We have the video. We're going to share it tomorrow. We are not speaking of opinion. The United States Congress have alleged that African people are terrorists, and they have vowed. Okay, because Michael Leslie then asked them, because they asked Michael Leslie, so what should we then do? What should we then do? And then Michael Leslie said in his statement, we need to be supported with aircraft, okay, ground force, and funds. That was Michael Leslie's statement. And the United States Congress said, okay, we're going to grant it on to you. So they have declared, allegedly, they have declared that Africans are terrorists. The African continent is a terrorist area that they want to go and fight. But again, they create all these proxy wars. They are not there in Sudan to fight. They are not there in DRC or Congo to fight. But They want to come and sabotage African freedom. And that is why Walter Rennie talked about a liberator zone will always be on a constant threat. And at this time, we Africans, we have to come to the realization that we have no friends. The only friends that we have are friends that really, truly love Africa and want to see Africa doing their own thing and Africa rising. All right? Let us be frank here. Let us be real here. The United States, EU, look, all these nations have colonized and enslaved and systematically killed African leaders. They are not our friends. They will now be our friends. And they have spoken and they speak, loudly about their plan, their aim, towards the African continent. These are people that don't care. And it is about time that we rise and take matter into our own hands and know who the enemies are. And we already know who the enemies are. But again, it's a warning to the United States. Don't even try it because you're going to lose this war. If you dare try it to go and wage war on Africa, you're going to lose this war and that will be the end. And I will leave it right there.
That will be the end. Hey, but we're looking for the end anyway, man. To this empire, it's causing all the misery. But I think like this is definitely so much. There's so much that has been happening lately, and I'm talking about positive and negative that shows how important it is for African people, wherever we are, if here in the United States, Europe, and on the continent, and throughout the Americas, from Brazil to Venezuela, the importance of our unity, because the backlash right now, we see the backlash. Every time I turn around, there's some white person on social media or on TV or in the streets, right, using the N-word, showing their true colors, and being supported, right, being supported by other people who have this superior mindset, this idea that they're supreme, right, that they're better than everyone else, and that they are sort of like have this privilege, right? So this is what we're dealing with right now, and I think if there's any time, at least that I've been alive, where I've seen such vitriol, right, and pushback against African resistance is now. But like, and I'm talking about in my lifetime, at least where I'm aware of what's going on, around the world. I'm just seeing like what's happening in the Sahel, and I'm seeing more and more organizations trying to overcome, like Pan-Afrikan or African internationalist organizations trying to overcome their differences. Like it's a great time to be Black and to push Black power. Even in the film, in the music, we still got some work to do there. But I just feel like there's a certain energy in the air right now that we have to seize the time. Bottom line. And so, with that being said, too, we have to make sure that we're looking out for the tricks of the imperialists, because there's going to be a whole lot of manipulation. There's going to be a whole lot of deceit. All of that going on. Not that they haven't been doing it before, but they're going to try to use this to stop the African Revolution, to undermine the African Revolution. And so Frantz Fanon gets into that in this chapter, and we're going to make this transition right now. And again, like we kind of left off with this conversation last week, just making the connection of what Fanon is talking about with this. And this is, he's analyzing the Algerian Revolution, and what he's talking about with this revolution, this overthrow of French power or Western power in Algeria, in Africa. We can see the same thing happening today, with the Sahel states shaking France off of their back like fleas, like the fleas they are. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get into this. Oh yeah, and I also will put the text in the chat. Let me do that for those who want to follow along. And before we get off too, I'll share the I'll share the link in case anybody wants to come up and build with us as well. All right, so I just shared the book in the chat. This council. All right. Again, appreciate everybody for tapping in. Make sure you like and share. And if this is your first time with us, subscribe to the channel. Yeah, we building, man. Let's go. All right, let's get into this Fanon, man. Big up to Fanon. This is the centennial, one of the many centennials of our revolutionary thinkers, revolutionary fighters, heroes, and ancestors. So the disappointment and illusions of French colonialism. I started off here when we last week. Oh my goodness, where I go? Did I go to the end of the chapter? Excuse me, Conrad. What just happened, man? Here we go. All right, let me be careful. I was trying to go down. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna pick up right here the economic argument. All right, in the face of the defection, even of men who they had used and dishonored in the eyes of the Algerian people, and in the face of the active hostility of the elites, the French authorities launched the second operation. Essentially, this amounted to cutting off the presumably sound population from the revolutionary movement. And to give some context, Fanon is talking about the tactics that the imperialists will use to counter the revolution. Incapable of apprehending the real significance of the battle for liberation, France in the first stage recognized the existence of a problem which it declared to be economic and social. In the hope of silencing the voice of national dignity, it solemnly undertook to fight poverty and to solve the housing problem. Wages were symbolically increased and investment programs announced. This treatment of a demand for national liberation as if it were a peasant uprising or a manifestation of social discontent resulted from a double confusion. The idea that there is no Algerian national consciousness on the one hand, and on the other, the conviction that the promises of the improvement of the living standard of the populations would suffice, bring back order and peace. But the French authorities, using informers who were harder and harder to find and more costly, were somewhat baffled to learn that the movement was solid, rooted in the masses, and driven by it. In the second state, against a united front, inhuman and cynical methods. In the second stage, and with a rare duplicity, the French administration organized the Mozambique operation, the Cabal operation, the Jewish operation, the Harka operation. What was concretely sought was the appearance within the population of contradictory, hence counter-revolutionary currents. These operations were characterized by the exploitation of a certain number of local hostilities created by colonialism, the maintenance and the provoked intensification of cultural differences transformed into feuds between clans, or in some cases between races. Meloza and Wagram developed to an ultimate point of cruelty methods in which rapes and massacres ostensibly perpetrated by the FLN, cleanups of entire douars, were aimed at provoking the outrage of the population and the condemnation of the revolutionary movement. The mistake common to these various maneuvers is that the French authorities obstinately overlooked the fact that the FLN identifies itself with the Algerian people. The husbands of the women who had been raped were in the local FLN group. In the evening, they would come down from the operational sectors to kiss their children. And the houses of the wrecked douars had been built by the Mujahideens who held the surrounding mountains. The staff headquarters, the victims of an out-of-date policy and of its lack of information as to the structure of the FLN, imagines that in the mountains anything can happen. But the fact is that nothing happens that is not foreseen and decided. before we move too far away from this, and let me read this at the bottom too. The Mozambiques, Cabals, and the Jews are minority populations of Algeria. Harka is a raid, and the Dua is a village, if I'm pronouncing that right. Mujahideen's plural of mujahid. What's that? Mujahid, or is it mujahid? Fighters, originally fighters in Muslim holy war. I'm thinking jihad, so maybe it's mujahid. But I want to stop there because I think there's a lot we can take from this and learn from this. Fanon's talking about the strategy of divide and conquer, right? And how the colonizer is exploiting differences between these cultures that has actually been brought about through colonialism, through colonial contradictions. And the reason I want to stop there is because we find that happening among us as African people, right? We can go to the continent, or we can go here. You can have your choice. So, you know, I'm gonna use here as an example, or maybe Frank, you can take it to the continent. But I can talk about the different groups that have among African people that have arisen, where you have some people who consider themselves American descendants of slaves, and some people consider themselves foundational Black Americans. Some people consider themselves Aboriginal Indian, and so forth, right? And there's others. There's different cultures. Like even within the African culture, the African nation in the United States, there are various cultures within that, right? It's not homogenous, despite what some people may think. There may be some things that you can say are universal across the African nation in the United States, but there are differences that has caused divisions among African people. There's class divisions, there's cultural differences, right? Class differences, cultural differences that has caused divisions. But these divisions have been brought about through colonialism, and part of the struggle, we can deepen it, but part of it is a struggle over resources that we don't even control in this country. And so where you hear one side who is attacking, you know, immigration because there's people coming in this country who are getting jobs or getting resources that are supposed to go to African people or African Americans. For those, just to be clear, because that's who some of these groups are identified as. But they're struggling to get resources, so it's a fight over resources that's controlled by the colonizer. Instead of unifying and overturning the system, right, and using those resources to empower the working class. And so that's what we have, right? And so these divisions, but what happens is the colonizer can exploit those differences and cause those and exacerbate those tensions between those groups of people. So, you know, I just wanted to use that as an example, but I think like we have to be able to see through that. And we can even talk about, you know, the differences between the revolutionary segment in society, where you have the cultural nationalists against the revolutionary nationalists. Again, like these divisions, right, where we should be working together against a common enemy. But I don't know if you have some examples, Frank, if you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to start with Ibrahim Traoré first. One of the things that he did that Fanon just talked about here. So you see, that is why I love the work of Ibrahim Traoré, not just, you know, what he's doing physically, but he understands, you know, his job. Let us be frank. Ibrahim Traoré understands his job very well. All right. He's looking at all aspects of this whole situation of his leadership, and he's looking at all aspects of what been taking place right on the African continent and also in a Black nation. So what he did that Fanon just talked about here, right? recently Abraham Tuare, because he knows that this is what exactly they are going to do, because in most of these African nations, when it comes to the religious aspect, we have two forms of religion there. We have the Christian and the Muslim, right? Now there are other denominations there, but we are talking about the most dominant, right? They are the Muslim and the Christian. So in most African nations, we have these two denominations, we have these two religions there. So Abraham Tuare know that while he's fighting a physical battle, he must also face or fight the spiritual battle, right? So on one of these occasions that they were celebrating in Burkina Faso, I believe it was the Ramadan or so, what he did was, instead of him just focusing on celebrating a Ramadan or just killing cow, right, and eating, he knows very well that the imperialist was going to infiltrate the Christian religion or the Christian faith to go against the Muslim. And that was going to undermine his government. I don't want to say junta because we don't have junta. These are revolutionary leaders, all right? Now, the imperialist, so-called imperialists can call it junta, and the neo-colonialists can call it junta. That's their business. We don't care. All we know, these are government loved by the people and for the people, right? And doing the people job. Now, so he knew that if he don't take a step to bring the Muslim and the Christian together, it was going to create a chaos in his government, and that it was going to lead to complete damage and a misunderstanding, right, or propaganda in his leadership. So he was able to bring the Muslim and the Christian together on that day and say, as I will paraphrase it, whether you are Muslim, you are Christian, we all serve the same God. We might be serving the same God, just in different way, on different time, on different clock, right? But our prayer may be different. Maybe some people may pray 5 times a day, 10 times a day, while some people pray 1 time a day, while some people go 12 days, let's say 7 days in a week, while some people go maybe 1 day or Sunday in a week. But at the end of the day, we are all fighting or serving, right, a common purpose. That is, at the end of the day, we pray, we say, Amen, we pray to the same God, right? So, this is to unify us, this is to bring us together. We are Burkina Faso. You might be Muslim, I might be Christian, or you might be Christian, I might be Muslim, but at the end of the day, we have a common denominator, and that denominator is Burkina Faso. And that identity is, we are Burkina Faso. You can be a Muslim. If you leave from here, you go out. You're going to tell somebody, I'm from Burkina Faso, I am Burkina Faso. Likewise, Christian. So what he did was, if anybody dare try it, right, bring any religion conflict in Burkina Faso, you will have an imprisonment term.
Yeah.
Whether you could be Christian, whether you could be Muslim, if anybody try it, bring a religion conflict, right, in Burkina Faso, you will serve an imprisonment term. And I love what he did there. And this is what exactly Fanon was talking about here. And let me just go deeper into it again. You see, the imperialists always leave room, right, for conflict that they can come and use. Let's go to Nigeria. Do you think, you see, for example, the Biafra, right? The Biafra war been going on, or they said they've been fixing injustices. They've been coming to the international community, so-called international community. They've been coming to the United Nations as well, given their issues, right, that is happening in Nigeria. Now, why have the so-called West not spoken about it, not giving attention? Do you see the media? Have you seen any Western media reporting about the Biafra war, the Biafra issue, or the Biafra concern? No, because the government in Nigeria, right, the administration in Nigeria, time to time, in memorial time, have been supporting the interests of these so-called West or these so-called imperialists. So they are not going to jeopardize their interests and then talk about the Biafra issue or bring it to light. They are not going to do that. But the day, because they already know that the Biafra already have issue with the Nigerian government, right? Now, the day the Nigerian government or any president come into power, right, and want to do the same thing Abraham Traore is doing right now, and want to nationalize the resources and want to take out a foreign corporation or interest, right? Now, the imperialists is going to now use the Biafra. Now you're going to see the Western media news now going to come out to bring the issue of the Biafra to light and says these people have been oppressed since centuries upon centuries. Now that's the time they're going to give ammunition, right, support to the Biafran because they want to cause issues or destabilization in Nigeria. All right, so they always leave room. So they are going to come to the Biafran need, but that will happen if a government come to power and decide that we don't want Western influence, we don't want Western interest. We got to do what Burkina Faso is doing, what Mali is doing, what Niger is doing. In fact, we got to allow the AES. The moment that's about to happen, that's the time they're going to support the Biafra. That is what Fanon is talking about. Let me just go deeper a little bit if you still have time for me. Let me go deeper. Now, you see, they always go to the African continent, right, and talk about tribal conflict or tribal issues, or because we have so many dialects, we have so many language. Or, for example, what happened in Rwanda, the Hutus, the Tutsis, even what happened in Liberia, they say, oh, the Klan, the Mano, the Gio, right, the Mende, the Loma, all of these things, right? Now, they will come on the African continent and write book about it and then identify the issue that, oh, these are the issue, these are the this, these are the this. But the reason why they do these things, they do it because even though they write, they report on it, that does not mean their writing are in our favors. That does not mean they are actually speaking of the truth. Now, they will say the issue of Africa is tribalism. The issue of Africa is because it has so many tribes. The issue of Africa is because it has so many dialects. What they're trying to do here is they want us to forgo our cultures. They want us to forgo our existence, our identity, and become French, and become English, and become Portuguese, right? And then lost our identity. Now, that is not
easier to control that way.
Yes, that is not actually what bringing issues to the African continent because we have so many languages. Now, and then once they say these things, and then you will see the propaganda media, you will see the propaganda narrative, the so-called African that work for BBC, that work for these Western organizations. Now they will not be the one to take those narratives, right, and then say, listen, these are the problem and the causing issue in our very prospective country. And then you will see the small media will now take it and report on it again, going against or in favoring the imperialists. And then we will use that to start causing war among ourselves, causing internal conflict, internal hate among ourselves, to say, oh, the Guillaume hate the Crown man, the Crown man hate the Loma man, or the Hutus, the Tutsis hate the Tutsis. All of these things, right? They create avenue for it. But again, before we accept this Western narrative, that because we have so many culture, we are diverse, that's the reason why these things are happening on the African continent. We have to do research. Before the white man came to the African continent, how did we live? How did we live? There was no conflict. There was no tribal conflict. There was no here and there. No, those things did not exist. In fact, every tribe was a kingdom. Every tribe was a kingdom. And then this kingdom exchange, they did business with each other. All right. Now, this kingdom, in fact, if there's an issue in this kingdom, they will go to the next kingdom for solution, for help, for them to work together. That's how we live. Okay, we now have these conflicts and things. But then how come today the white man who created the problem, who caused the problem, will come and tell us these are the issues, right? But they cannot help us to bring solutions to the issues. Now, what they do here is, after they have created these things, and if we are not smart and become so dumb and stupid, and then rely on their narrative, and then we'll take this narrative and create a conflict and create a hate among ourselves, and then once that happens, now, one of the trap in that nation that will rise up to become a leader, right? The moment that trap began again to do things in the interest of the people, the same Westerners, the problem that they have created that we hate one another, they will use our same means and then come and then say, listen, you see this particular trap? This particular trap have come to serve the interest of this trap. This particular trap does not like you. And then they will sponsor another trap who feel that they have had issue with this trap. Now, why am I saying this? They did the same thing in Liberia. They did the same thing in Liberia, right? They created issue between a Mano and a Gio, right? They created issue between a Mano and a Gio. Now, to some extent, not the Mano and a Gio, but a Gio and a Crown, to be specific. The Gio and a Crown. To some extent, now, though being from the Crown trap, now, the instigator, though, to carry on some illegal issue or to some bad issues or killing, though when they did it, when Doe did that, the people from Nimba saw it, right, as an issue, and then they have issue against the Crown, the entire trap. Now, they brought it down. They then, now, after Doe now decided not to get in the interest of the U.S., now they used the Gio people, the Gio trap, to go against the Crown to create war. So they then used Prince Johnson. And then Prince Johnson then went as a revolutionary to fight for his tribe. Then the United States government formed what we call the INPFL, Independent NPFL, and made Prince Johnson the leader, and then supported him financially, and then when they removed Doe and created chaos. So these are the things Fanon is talking about here, that we continue to be used systematically by these same people over and over. And it is about time, right? We come together and understand these things that were written by our forefather and began to know the game and who our enemy are and stop going against each other. At the end of the day, we're still going to have issue among ourselves. We're still going to have issue among ourselves, right?
Yeah.
The United States don't have issue here. Who told you they don't have issue among themselves? But they try to solve those issues. They don't allow those internal conflict to escalate, right, for the outside world to see it and think. So even though we may have internal conflict or issues, but those issues should not be the cause that outside influence will come and use us to go against each other.
Yeah, indeed. And it's, you know, as you were talking, I was thinking about a Malcolm X quote, you know, just going back to what Fanon is, it's just exposing the tricks that the French attempted to use then and that the French is using now, along with the entire West, because no one has more of an interest in maintaining the system than the West, because they designed the system, right? Not that other countries or nations have found a way to incorporate themselves into the international political economy in a way that benefits a particular class of people. But you still have this relationship with satellite countries. You have these metropoles and satellite countries where the power is still overwhelmingly located in the West or the North, however you want to look at it. But there's something that Fanon spoke to reminded me of Malcolm X. Fanon, I just read what Fanon is talking about. Some of what the French would do is try to improve the economic conditions of the colonized as a counterinsurgency tactic, and so through that, they're able to sort of separate, or at least they attempted to separate a certain segment of the population, the masses of the population, from the vanguard population, which it didn't work. They didn't fall for the trick. And so we have to do the same, right? Or we have to make sure that we don't fall for the trick, that the colonizer may some of the concessions that they may bring to our community. And some of those concessions could be where we see like a minimum wage increase, right? Or a stimulus check. Start something. People were loving. I don't know if that was Trump, Bush. I can't remember which president. Man, they all the same to me. So, but somebody gave a stimulus check.
Trump did it. Trump did it.
This was
Biden
this
did
was
it.
during the recession, so it might have been like
Obama did
Bush,
it.
It might have been Obama,
Yeah.
but it was like Bush was in office. He might have like passed it, but it didn't go into effect until Obama, because you know what they do. They both try to both administrations, the past administration, new administration, always try to take credit for the good stuff and don't take credit for anything, any regression that take place. So I really don't. Let me see. But the point I was going to make too, with Fanon was speaking to Malcolm X warned African leaders during the African Summit back in '64, and Malcolm at the African Summit told the African leaders, like, don't trade. I think he said, don't trade racism or something for American dollarism. Basically, he was warning them about American dollarism in '64, and sure enough, we have these neo-colonialists that are in power that fell for American dollarism or Western currency. But again, like, we've had these warnings, and so Fanon, again, he's showing us what some of these tactics will be. I'm gonna just go through a little more of this. See if I can get to, because I think there's like two more that he speaks about. There, actually, where was I at? The movements of the units conform to a strategic program drawn up by the ALN General Staff. Every unit has a precise sector and a command post that coordinates it. There is no FLN unit executing a more or less coherent movement that could commit massacres at random. When a company or a battalion moves out of its sector or its region, it is carrying out a command by the Walaya staff. This is previously communicated to the various regional or area command posts, and the march is covered by the local units. Because they had no knowledge of this, the French authorities let loose their soldiers and their harkas on the Algerian civilian populations. Harkas, again, is raids. So each time the will to independence grew more irrepressible, the Mozambique operation lasted only a few days. The Algerian Mozambiques, mostly tradesmen, received numerous threatening letters. Raids were organized on their shops. An atmosphere of a racist character was created. This cruel attempt soon fell when the FLN brought the facts to light. The Jewish operation likewise had a racist character. It was exposed in a famous letter of the FLN addressed to the Jewish community of Algeria. Colonialism trump card, however, was represented by the MNA. Non-existent on the national territory, Messilism in France enjoyed the enemy's unconditional support. The French, on a number of occasions, facilitated the transport of hundreds of Messilists and undertook to arm them. Quickly identified upon their arrival on national territory by the FLN information agency, they joined our ranks or were sentenced to death and executed for treason to the national cause in collaboration with the enemies. So it reminded me of, like, the Ivory Coast, man. So a classical explanation. There was left to France only a third and last operation to resort to. Its two phases are very similar. The discovery of foreign and more specifically communist inspiration behind the national liberation movements. The first spectacular phase illustrates perfectly the degree of unawareness achieved by the French governments. The Suez expedition was meant to strike the Algerian Revolution at the summit. Egypt, accused of directing the struggle of the Algerian people, was criminally bombarded. International peace, momentarily in danger, was saved by the vigorous and unequivocal attitude of the United Nations. At the same time, however, military operations were intensified in Algeria. The FLN took the initiative throughout the territory. The Great Eight-Day Strike reaffirmed the national unanimity in the struggle and the maintenance of the objectives. The second phase, begun, abandoned, and resumed, was never carried through. The communist scarecrow was not extensively invoked. The French colonialists sensed that it was beside the mark. They were not convinced by the argument. So I'm gonna stop there. It's interesting too, like when you think now, a lot of the things, like the dynamic, of course, is different when we're talking about Burkina Faso and Algeria, because of France's direct sort of relationship or control over that population, right, and them rising up against that population. With Burkina Faso, they were dealing more so with neo-colonialism, with a French presence in the country, right? And France sort of, even when you talk about some of the operations, military operations and so forth, France was like leading up. There was like this dependency on France, economically, militarily, and otherwise. And so I'm speaking about in Burkina Faso, like today. So there was the dynamic was different, but still the fact that France had this, and I'm gonna say dependency on Burkina Faso, because sometimes we don't talk about that like the other way around. It's not just that our African people have been forced to be dependent on Europeans because of this political economy that we're a part of, that they have forced on African people. Once we separate ourselves from that, we can gain our independence because we have the resources. And that's what we have to understand is like they are dependent upon African people for our labor and our resources, right? And there's always, and I say labor because African people have always been a source of cheap labor. And then they started looking towards other people when African people started to demand more for their labor. They went to other territories and other places and other groups. But as long as African people could be a source of cheap labor, and that's why they stay on the continent. They stay on the continent because of that source of cheap labor. But once we understand that they have that dependency on us, then we can take the power and the control back in our hands. And that's what Burkina Faso is doing. That's what they understood. That's what even Ghana, with all its contradictions, like when they were talking about refining cocoa in Ghana and not in Europe, you got to take, that was a good step in the right direction, but you got to take it even further. Yeah, go ahead, Frank. I'm gonna give you the last words. We're gonna
there's something I want to show here quick. I don't know if we still have time, and it just kind of relating to what you spoke about, Frantz.
Well, we might have to. I gotta jump on a meeting.
Oh, okay, all right. Then
Yeah.
Then we'll skip that. We'll skip that, and then we'll just skip that. Yeah, but what you are saying, it is true, and I will just link that to Ivory Coast. Again, we're going to keep measuring Ivory Coast, because Ivory Coast and Benin, they are the two most recent, nation. I would say obstacle to the African, issues in Africa. They are the nation that are hosting actually the terrorists, because African is a terrorist based on their behavior. So just what we're saying and what Fanon is saying, right? Africa's being the nation that is hosting terrorists, because this is where the terrorists came from, because that's where we have African training these terrorists to go to Burkina Faso to unalive a leader that is loved by the people, again using another African nation. And this is not to say the Ivorian are the people. No, it is the government. It is the Ivorian government, Ouattara, all right, that is agent of the devil, agent of the enemy, that is making these decisions. So we are not talking about the Ivorian citizens. In fact, there's a video that I watched, the Ivorian in France, all right, because there was some delegate I went to France. The Ivorian in France stood against their government, the leaders that went to France, asking them, why should you have a terrorist in Africa or in Africa to go and attack another African nation? All right. a nation that are doing everything right for its citizens. So we are not talking about the average citizens. We are talking about the President Ouattara, the slave that is serving a slave master. And now, that is not to forget Liberia. All right, Liberia, Joseph Boakai under his government also is trying to invite a terrorist organization, African, to have a base in Liberia. So there's an agreement in there. I think this year they need to have or Ladia Ano, they call it WALC something. First time in Liberia. And I'm saying this to the Liberian people. We should not allow it. We know what went on in Liberia, that we died 14 or 15 years, right? We have war in our country and we die, and we have the United States Embassy in Liberia. They did not come, they did not bring peace. They did not bring their army to come and fight for us. They did not bring, or they did not come to talk about peace and security or collaboration, those things. They did not do it. They watched us die. They were not our friends, right? Today, they are now still our friend. We cannot allow the United States to have a base or to have military base, to have AFRICOM in Africa, right? A terrorist, an armed organization or group that is there to train, because the United States Congress made it known to us through Michael Leslie that the AFRICOM is on the African continent to train Africans to go remove African leaders. So in that perspective, they are terrorist organization because they made it known to us. They trained the current Guinean president, Mamadi Mbeya, to go and remove Kony from power. They said they trained it. And Michael Leslie said, core value. It is their core value to remove African. It is their core value to destabilize African the African continent and the African nation. It is the United States core value. So in that perspective, these are things that they say. We are not speaking of opinion or emotion.
Right.
That is their behavior. That's what they say. Their core value is not to see Africa rise. Their core value is not to see Africa taking her place in the world. But their core value is to destabilize Africa. Their core value is to kill African leaders who will be for African people. That is their core value. And in that perspective, we do not want such core value with the United States. We say AFRICOM is an armed terrorist organization. We do not want it in Liberia. And Liberia should not be the Africa's. Liberia should not be like Benin. Liberia should be a nation, all right, for the African people, and to collaborate with the development, the upliftment, the freedom, the unification, the liberation of the African continent. We say no to AFRICOM. AFRICOM is a terrorist organization.
That's a fact. I concur. And make sure you tap in, because I'm sure Franklin will continue this conversation tomorrow right here on this channel at 1 p.m. So make sure, again, if this is your first time with us, subscribe to the channel, like and share, so more folks can tap into what we're doing here at We Charge Colonialism. I want to appreciate you all for tapping in this morning and being a part of this discussion. Make sure, you know, if you can, support us. Go to our website, wechargecolonialism.org, and check out our articles. You support us by just visiting us and being a part of these conversations, man, because we just want to make sure that we connect with more of our people, because it's going to take the masses, united African people around the world to overturn colonialism, to overturn imperialism. They've been in power for too long. They've been abusing it, misusing the power that they have, and it's up for African people to stand up, not not to fight for some sort of reform of the system, because the system is inherently oppressive and exploitative. It's to unite so we can overturn the system and create something new. They got us to the point where we can't even envision a system outside of the one that they have designed for us. So with that being said, Uhuru, peace, Black power, power to the people. till next time, we back here to continue with Fanon next Saturday at 10. Actually, next Saturday is Malcolm X Festival. So see you in 2 weeks. Might have to see you in 2 weeks, y'all. So big up.
The white power structure, because that's all we have in America. And the white power structure today is just as much interested in perpetuating slavery as the white power structure was 100 years ago. Only now they use modern methods of doing so. And realizing that the black people in this country are waking up and becoming filled with a desire to be looked upon as men and as human beings. The white power structure to slow down that struggle for freedom and human dignity uses tricks. 100 years ago they could do it with chains. Today they use tricks. And one of